I want to dive deep into something I normally don't talk about, and that's how my schizoaffective disorder affects my daily life. I've talked about the extremes of my condition, like how everything is when I'm in episodes, but I've yet to talk about what happens to me on a day-to-day basis. So trust me when I say that schizoaffective disorder is a daily battle. And if you don't know me already, my name is Kit and I have schizoaffective disorder, which means that I experience symptoms of schizophrenia, such as delusions and hallucinations, but also symptoms of a mood disorder, such as bipolar or major depression. There are two kinds of the condition, the bipolar type and the depressed type, and I fall into the bipolar category. And for this video, I'm going to simplify things and just talk about schizoaffective disorder in terms of its mood side and its psychotic side. And for me personally, the mood and the psychotic symptoms exist on two separate spectrums, meaning that just because one is acting up doesn't mean the other is following it. And so with that out of the way, I'm going to talk about my daily experience with the mood component, then the psychotic component, and ending a little bit on the treatment component. So the mood disorder side. For me, this is actually the hardest part of my condition to deal with on a day-to-day basis because even while medicated, my moods are extremely intense. The affective side of my condition is identical to that of bipolar 1 disorder, which means that I experience the glorious, high-flying, life-ruining state of mania, but also into a deep depression that sends me into horrendous waves of despair, all in cycles that leave me wondering what's up and what's down. Sound dramatic? Well, that's bipolar 1 for me. It's very dramatic. But the key thing about mood disorders is that they're due to a chemical imbalance, not necessarily situations in my daily life. Which means I'll wake up depressed as hell or manic as hell for no reason whatsoever. And when that happens, I have to deal with it, period. And it's known that disorders like schizoaffective disorder are affected by stress. Like, yes, that does happen to me. But it's important to know that my mood swings are not related to something situational, which would be typical of someone with borderline personality disorder. And that means my moods are only fixed by medication, not necessarily therapy and lifestyle changes. And sometimes those meds can only do so much. And so when I do get breakthrough mood swings, I still have to go to work and I still have to take care of myself. Which in short means that if I'm depressed, I have to do nice things for myself every few hours, and if I'm manic, I have to try and slow down the best I can. All while making sure I'm doing everything I'm expected to do at work or in social situations, and as you could probably imagine, that gets very exhausting very quickly. It sucks, and if I wake up in either of those mood states, I know that it's going to be one hell of a day, and I can't do much about it. But there is a good side to this. My medications work very, very well, so when I do experience mood swings, they're not as drastic and life-ruining as they have been before I was medicated. And so now, when I would otherwise get manic, I only get hypomanic, meaning a less intense form of mania that doesn't disrupt your life too much. That happens, and then I just make things and create stuff and work on costumes instead of flying to other countries with very little notice. Which I think is an improvement. And really at the end of the day, when this happens and I realize what's going on, all I really can do is keep taking my medications and just ride it out. And I'm actually quite self-aware of my condition, and because of that, when I realize I'm having a mood symptom, I have all these little cope ahead plans and checklists to basically go through when that stuff happens so that I know how to take care of myself until the mood eventually lifts. But even with all of this, mood swings are still a pain in the ass. And now let's talk about psychosis and my day-to-day experience with that part of my condition. It's easier to deal with and manage than my mood states, which I'm grateful for, but it does offer its own set of challenges. Now, of course, when you hear about psychosis, chances are you hear about people seeing or hearing things that aren't there. And while I do hallucinate visually on occasion, it's very rare. But what I deal with regularly is that I hear voices. And yes, even though I'm medicated, I still hear voices. And it's a common misconception that taking antipsychotic medication automatically means that it takes away all the psychosis, and for many people that's just not the case. Before I went on Zyprexa in 2018, I was actually hearing voices constantly, like 24/7. I always had someone to talk to, and it had been like that since I was 14 and in middle school. But meds did change all of that drastically. And so now, really what I can say is that the voices are mostly gone. They still come back on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times a day, and then sometimes I'll skip a day too, but it's anywhere from like 5 minutes to 30 minutes instead of constantly. And most of what I get today is these little snippets of conversation that are reminiscent of really short phone calls with bad cell service. But fun fact, usually when I do hallucinate, it's actually a good voice, meaning the vast majority of the voices I hear in my head are good. And when I'm working, those voices actually help me to write and compose emails, or help calm me down before I have a really stressful meeting with my boss, or if I'm doing a new part of my job, they're there to like help me through it. I actually have really bad anxiety as part of my disorder, and my voices actually help me with that. And when I'm at home, those voices can actually help me unwind and relax, decompress from the day, and keep me company while I do chores or work on cosplay. Just imagine having someone there that knows everything about a situation without you having to tell them anything. And most of the time, that's what my voices are to me. And I can't say this next thing all the time, of course, and I don't really know if I've actually said it at all to anybody now that I'm thinking about it, but honestly, hallucinating can be kind of awesome. But of course, for me at least, having good ones also means that I have some bad ones. And they mostly rear their ugly head in saying snide comments out of the blue with no warning whatsoever, and it takes everything in me not to react. Imagine someone came up to you, insulted you, and then leave before you could reply, and that's kind of how it is most of the time. And I'd like to think I have a good poker face at this point because, oh my god, some of the things they would say. I know I slip up sometimes, like I'll flinch if they yell at me, and I just kind of have to pass it off as something else. And this is actually interesting because I haven't said anything about this on the channel, and I'm not really sure I've told anyone really in real life except for maybe my therapist, but the voices I hear in my head, even though they're inside my head like thoughts, they're kind of over in this general area. It's never on the left side. It always feels like it's coming from the right side over my shoulder. And so when one of those mean voices basically runs up and insults me, I'll do this. Like this is what I fight the urge to do, almost like I'd see someone there if I looked there. And of course, since it's hallucination, I won't like ever see anyone there, but it's still a hard instinct to not do. So part of the struggle is fighting that natural urge to do that. And if I'm in the middle of a conversation with someone and a voice decides to tell me my hair looks really stupid that day, I can't exactly like do that and just kind of pass it off as something else. So it's something I have to actively fight not to do. And sometimes it's a little bit white knuckling it, if I'm being honest. And really at the end of the day, while I am good at holding two conversations at once, I really wish I didn't have to. So that's the majority of the psychosis I deal with on a regular basis, is those things like those mean voices, but also the nice voices. But I do have one other situation that is actually the hardest for me to deal with. And it's when the voices that I hear inside of my head start sounding like my own inner voice. And the way it really happens is like I'll be thinking a thought like in my head, like I think in an internal monologue, partially because I, grew up hearing voices and talking to them. And so my inner monologue will be going, and then there will be these foreign voices that also sound like me, and it really gets all jumbled up. And then I guess I can't tell what's the schizo and what's the kitzo. And so I tell myself in those moments, because it's very chaotic and very nerve-wracking, that what's real, what's not, what's me, what's them, again, what's the schizo, what's the kitzo, and that it doesn't really matter what it is. It doesn't matter who it is, because it's technically all me anyway. Because I can still function, I can still think, and yes, weird comments happen and little oddities, things bounce around a lot, but it's kind of just how my brain works. And I can still be productive, and I kind of just have to jump through a few more hoops at that point. And it really did used to freak me out when I couldn't tell the difference between what was them and what was me. And that's the thing about hallucinations, is that they're very real for the person experiencing them, but these days I kind of just take it in stride, let the chaos and the smorgasbord, whatever you want to call it, happen, and just kind of, I don't know, keep going, I guess. And it's a really weird way to think. It's a really weird way to get the job done, but it works for me. Like I figure out how to make it work, and sometimes I'm even laughing by the end of it, so it's not even always horrible. I mean, it's not even necessarily horrible or good or anything. It's almost neutral in the middle, because it's just jumbly thoughts, basically. Like it's very fragmented and broken and confusing at the same time, but I'd say it's mostly neutral. And the big thing I hang on to with any of the psychotic stuff I deal with on a regular basis, whether it's the thought jumbles or the good voices or the bad voices and the insults, is that it always will go away. I take antipsychotic medication, and it's because of that medication that I don't experience hallucinations 24/7 anymore. So if I have a bad one, if I have a good one, if I have a neutral one, eventually they will all leave. And if it's bad, I just gotta ride it out. And if it's good, I just enjoy the conversation. And yeah, that's psychosis for me on a daily basis. And finally, I want to talk about the daily things I have to do as part of my treatment. And little disclaimer, not all of these are daily, but they're at the very least on an extremely regular basis. So coping with mood symptoms and psychotic symptoms is one thing, but I have to do many other things to make sure that all of that is maintained. To start, I have to go to therapy either once a week or once every other week. 2 weeks is the absolute bare minimum I can do, and I'm always constantly having to schedule this around work. And it's kind of stressful sometimes trying to figure out when to leave and when to set up stuff. But the thing is, if I don't go to therapy, things in my life get really bad really quick. And in this same vein, I have to use DBT skills every single day. DBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, is a therapy program that taught me skills that I use to live a productive, happy, independent life. It teaches mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and emotion regulation. All things that I kind of need in my life, and my therapist, who is also trained in DBT, helps me practice those skills. And the thing about DBT is that it actually is the thing that helps keep me alive. It helps keep me thriving. It helps keeps me going, because without it, I don't want to think too hard about where I'd be without DBT. And in addition to therapy and DBT, I do have to take medications twice a day, and even then some more as needed. And if you do want to know what meds I take every day, I do have a video talking about my nightly meds for schizoaffective disorder, and I will link that up here in the cards. Without going into too much detail, my morning meds don't really cause side effects, but my nightly meds do have side effects that I need to sleep through. For example, my antipsychotic makes me sleepy, that kind of thing. So I basically have to structure my life around a regular bedtime on a regular basis. Now, sleeping through things is great, but there's also other side effects I have to deal with on a daily basis, and I will just name one of many, and it's that the Zyprexa causes unwanted muscle movements in my body, and that's called extrapyramidal symptoms. And so I basically treat that with Cajentin or benztropine, which is an anticholinergic that basically calms that down. And exercise and yoga helps calm down my anxiety, and I actually keep to a low glycemic diet in order to reduce blood sugar spikes, because blood sugar spikes can cause mood swings. And all of these things are things I have to do on a regular basis in order to maintain the life that I have learned to love. And honestly, it's a lot of upkeep. I actually do know that. It's taken me a long time to figure out how to balance everything and do it right. And I can't say I do it right every time, but I have really created a life that I truly believe is worth chasing, worth keeping, worth holding, and I will do anything to maintain that. And that's what schizoaffective disorder is like to me on a day-to-day basis. It truly does seep into every single corner and aspect of my life, to the point where I wonder, what would I be without the condition? Anyways, if you have a mental illness or another condition, what are your daily struggles? I told you mine, now tell me yours. And the thing is, none of us are alone in this, and I think there's something beautiful about the internet in bringing people closer together that experience these things that would otherwise isolate them. So basically, just because I'm experiencing schizoaffective in my way doesn't mean that, say, if you have it, you'd experience it in the same way. I really value other people's perspectives, and I've asked for people's perspectives on this channel before, so if you do want to share yours, because I really do like hearing them. And if you don't want to share, that's okay too. I love you just as much as everyone else. And this is when I say thank you guys so much for joining me in making the uncomfortable comfortable. If you want to keep the conversation going, of course there is the comment section down below. I mentioned that before, but you can also hit me up on Twitter or Instagram at SchizoKitzo. I love talking to you guys about mental health, because getting the conversation going is so important for normalizing these conditions. But other than that, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.